The title of OSASMA the Gun Part 2, Jihadi Joe versus McWorld, is a take on a book by Bill Clinton's one-time advisor, Benjamin Barber. The point being that the history of the 21st century is largely going to be the history of the confrontation between two very different concepts of civilization at the deepest level. What we consider the globalized, modern, forward-looking, progressive, technological civilization of the West, plus Japan, plus Korea, plus various places like that, versus the Islamic concept of a civilization is based on the Quran, backward-looking, looking back to a lost golden age instead of forward to a golden age to come. And that is going to be one of the two forces that shape the 21st century. So what I want to talk about here is what they think of us and what we think of them. Now, I think we know what we think of as Islamic civilization, or would-be Islamic civilization, in our Western, technological, forward-looking civilization, or so we like to call it. And it's all true. They're backward-looking. They look at women as chattel. They look at ancient Sharia law as an absolute. They are undemocratic. Osama bin Laden himself, as well as Zarqawi, have openly said that democracy is evil. And we will see why a little bit later. That's what we think of them. We think of them as the devil, as undemocratic, Islamo-fascists as they're called. It's not the question so much of terrorism, which is only a tactic, but of what they sincerely believe and stand for. And face it, what they really believe and stand for are things that we consider evil and things that we loathe. Phallocratic anti-feminism, anti-democratic theocratic dictatorships, backward-looking technology, reactionary politics and economics. That's what we think of them. And we really are right. They are all these things. And what do the Islamicists think of us? They think we are a godless civilization. They think our bottom line is the bottom line. That money is the be-all and end-all for us. They think in those terms that we are soulless, that we are morally corrupt. When they come to the West, they think our women are hussies and prostitutes and whores because of the way that they dress. They look at a place like Las Vegas and they think they're in hell. They look at our politics in the third world as exploitive colonialist successors of the Crusaders. They say we're out just for their oil, and if it wasn't for the oil, we wouldn't give a shit about the Middle East or Iraq or Israel or any of it. We'd be perfectly content to let it remain a crummy, nothing backwater. They think we are corrupt. They think we're cynical. They think we have a dying civilization. They think our future is a disaster. And one could argue that they too are right about us. Because just as the West's criticism of communism in the Soviet Union ultimately proved kind of right, that doesn't mean that Karl Marx's criticism of Western capitalism is necessarily going to be proven wrong. In fact, I've written a whole novel about this called Greenhouse Summer. So they believe sincerely that they are on the side of good, on the side of Allah, and that we are evil, and at best we are on the sides of Mammon and the sacred bottom line and nothing else.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
And that is the most fundamental quality and definition of democracy itself, that the legitimacy of any government derives one way or another from the informed consent of the governed as expressed in a democratic process. That the democratic process can change the form of government, the laws, the constitutions, even the existence of the nation state itself. But the Islamicists do not believe this. They believe that the Quran is the direct word of Allah as dictated to Muhammad, and therefore immutable and unchangeable. And therefore they believe that the legitimacy of a government does not derive from the consent of the government, but from the Quran itself, and by extension the Sharia law passed down from Allah, and therefore not susceptible to legitimate change by the will of the people. And this is the most fundamental difference conceivable between two concepts of governmental legitimacy, between two concepts of political morality. It is real, it is sincere, and it is passionately held, as passionately as our dedication to democracy, and truth be told, on the evidence, more passionately held than what we are willing to do in the service of our own beliefs. And so this is a clash of civilizations on the most fundamental level possible, the very legitimacy of civilization itself. The Islamicists consider their civilization the only possible legitimate civilization, based as it is on the will of Allah as expressed in the Quran. And we, in democratic West and the rest of the democratic countries, sincerely believe that the only legitimate basis for a political civilization is based on the democratic consent of the governed. And in part 3 of OSASMA the Gun, we'll get into what sort of civilization the Islamicists are really fighting to reestablish. A new caliphate.